Good morning, everybody. As you start to arrive in the main plenary room, we're just letting people in from the waiting room, so if you can just bear with us, that's much appreciated. Thank you. How are we doing, Oriana? More people coming in?
Yes, people are slowly coming in. There's 24 of us right now.
24 people in the room?
Yes.
Right. Are we due to start at 11? Is that correct? I think I should...
Everyone is in now.
Okay, that's tremendous. Thank you. Thank you, Oriana. I think we'll make a start, and if other people come into the waiting room, you can just let those in. Oriana, if you could, please. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Martin Garrett and I'm Chief Exec at Cambridge Cleantech. I have to say I'm delighted to be working with the University of Cambridge and its constituent parts of the Maxwell Centre and Cambridge Zero on this event, looking at the first and last mile of travel and making that more greener. This is the first event in a series of 3 over the next couple of Thursdays in November, and I'll shortly hand over to Arga from the Maxwell Centre, who will tell you more about that and the whole process for the event series. I just wanted to say a welcome, and just to say that from a Cambridge Cleantech perspective, we're very keen to support our members at the moment in what of course is quite a difficult time. So what we've been doing is focusing on the key priorities. First of all, access to finance. So we have a Cleantech Venture Week coming up in a couple of weeks' time at the end of November. We had 120 applicants, and they've been whittled down to the 28 most investment ready, who'll be presenting to a digital room full of investors over 2 or 3 days in that last week in November. We're also promoting opportunities with our corporate members. So if you take a look at the events page of our website, you'll see quite a number of opportunities with half a dozen Polish corporates, for example. There's a couple of municipalities in Europe, one in Espoo in Finland, another one in Delft in the Netherlands, that are looking for energy related solutions for their district. So do keep an eye on that events page, because you'll see lots of opportunities that you may be able to supply the solutions for and pick yourself up a commercial contract. And the last thing we're doing, of course, is working again with the University of Cambridge on the Climate Change Festival, which is next week. And on the Tuesday of next week, we're actually helping to put together an event on transport. So related, I guess, in some ways to what we're doing over the next couple of weeks with this event series. But without further ado, let me hand over to Arga at the Maxwell Centre, who's going to take you through the agenda for this event and the process for the 3 events over the next couple of weeks. Arga.
Good morning, everyone. Just to echo Martin's words, I'm also delighted to be collaborating on this exciting project. You can see agenda in front of you. As we are planning it to be fairly concise, about 1.5 hours. Things might move a little bit fast, but for the purpose of capturing all the insights and being able to come back to it, we will be recording the session as well. I'll come back to that. So without further ado, this is the reason why we're actually here today. And that's a think piece. We called it November Think Piece series. Our thinking behind it was that both Cambridge University, its parts of it, and the Cambridge Cleantech have a substantial convening power. And we wanted to take a holistic approach to the issue of transportation, people transport, commuting, linking up the stakeholders, creating a consensus perhaps between our views on the matter. So the view we've taken is that if we start with a pre-pandemic baseline over here and consider which of the elements of our system already are good and should be maintained, we can just restart them after the pandemic allows us to go forward. What could be adapted, what needs to be actually replaced. And then all of the insights we gather from this community, people who join us later on as well, will form a document called the Think Piece, which is just a statement of really what are our views on the matter and how we can maybe move forward from there. So hopefully we'll create some sort of initial roadmap, identify potential partners for collaboration, and off we go to create our ideal future of the transport in Cambridge and beyond. So think about your participation in here as being crucial voice in this discussion. And what we would like to collate in the document is sort of listing challenges, gaps, and open questions that still need to be addressed, looking on the other side, whether we have any solutions in hand or any ideas for how to get there. We would want to also have an initial list of who might be the contributing parties, taking stock of people and those calls and other relevant people we might want to invite to discussion further on, and then maybe hazard some potential next steps. So this is not going to be an event where people will talk at you very much. Majority of it is actually going to be us listening to what you have to say. From that perspective, I also wanted to point out that sometimes maybe an interesting thought or a crucial idea comes later. Therefore, we have a thinkpiece@maxwell.com.ac.uk email address in here for you to submit ideas and comments throughout the month of November. So very, very briefly about housekeeping for today. I've already mentioned the workshop is being recorded by the organizers. This plenary session where people will be having opportunity to ask questions to the speakers and listen to presentations is going to be made available to you in due course. However, we will also record the breakout discussions for our own purposes to make sure we've captured all the points correctly. That will not be publicized any further. Please contribute. And just a reminder, we are using Zoom as a platform for today. So if you would be so kind while you're not speaking to mute yourself, there is a button towards the bottom left of your screen for that. As we're recording the plenary session, it may be available, as I've mentioned. If you prefer not to feature in it, please feel free to switch your video off and or rename yourself to something which is not identifiable if you'd rather have it that way. And then important points, as the presentations continue for the next about half an hour, please post your questions to the speakers into the chat. You will find it among the other controls of Zoom. Now the organizers will collate those answers, pick some that we think are particularly important and good to raise in the plenary session, and John will then chair answering of those few questions. This is not the whole discussion, of course, we'll continue talking afterwards. So just a few questions to start us going in the plenary, when afterwards we will pass you on to smaller group discussions. Okay, in which case, without further ado, also if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me or Oriane, Sylvie, Cynthia and Monica. Direct message if you have any issues, we'll try to resolve them for you as well. It's my pleasure now to introduce Professor John Miles from the Department of Engineering, University of Cambridge, who will set the scene for the workshop and start our thinking. Thank you. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Arga. I'm just trying to share my screen. Excuse me just a moment, and then I'll get started. I hope that's got my first slide up. Can you just confirm that for me, please, Arga? Thank you.
Yes.
Great. In that case, good morning, everybody. And it's a great pleasure to be here with you all. Convenience. Somebody said to me quite a long time ago, when we first started using the internet in a big way within business, we started emailing each other and doing other things that the internet suddenly allowed us to do. And he said, I think very wisely, everything that is inconvenient will change. And he said that in the early 90s, and I've never forgotten it, because it seems to me that the more the internet has pervaded our lives, the more that has come true, that the convenience of just clicking is something which has come to dominate our lives. And things that aren't convenient just die away because they're inconvenient. And so I want to use the word convenience as an important word this morning when we're thinking about the first and last mile. So I've been asked to speak about the first and last mile and its importance in making journeys. But I've made that my subtitle because I think the thing we're really talking about is convenience. And I'd like to explain why I think that. So all of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with this experience. If you live and work in Cambridge, then every morning we face this. And this isn't a problem that is peculiar to Cambridge. This is a problem that all small cities experience, and all large cities experience, all developed cities experience, all developing cities experience. Traffic congestion, and all of the things that go with it, pollution, accidents, all of these other things, they are a really common denominator of urban problems. So we're not alone in facing this problem. But of course, the problem is different within each context. Big cities and small cities have different variations of this same problem. So if we think particularly about Cambridge, excuse me, what does our problem look like? But in thinking about our problem, let's not forget that lots of other people have this problem too. And that means that we can learn from others in solving our problems, and we can share our solutions with others to help them solve theirs. But the picture for Cambridge, particularly, is a bit like a tide coming in the morning and going out in the evening. In fact, we might call this type of traffic flow tidal flow for that very reason. And that's where we get our congestion peaks. That's where the worst of the problem manifests itself. And the traffic flows in from all around the hinterlands, all around the surrounding region, into Cambridge in the morning through various different key corridors. And we end up with a daily total over a 24-hour period of some 65,000 cars coming into the city, each car having roughly 1.5 people in it. So nearly 100,000 people come into the city every day across the city boundaries. And that's a big number because the population of Cambridge is around about 100,000 people. So the population of Cambridge doubles over the course of a day. Actually, that's not quite true because some of the people go out again, but nevertheless, the number of people coming in is very large compared to the population, and that's why we have the problem. So the nature of our problem is dominated by this tidal flow, and we need to find a way to solve that problem. And in order to find a way to solve the problem, we need to think about, why does it occur in the first place? Well, obviously, because people are coming into work or coming into school or to the university or whatever it is that they're doing, they come in the morning. But why do they do it this way? Why do people sit in these horrible traffic jams for such a long period of time? It's not a very pleasant experience. And if you think about it, the answer is convenience. And you might very well say to me, well, that can't be right because it's not very convenient to sit in your car for an hour in a traffic jam every morning and the same in the evening. But then I would say to you, well, what do you mean by convenience? What do I mean by convenience? We'd have a long debate about this, but it's some combination of these things. If you want to go to work in the morning, and if you need to travel a distance that's beyond walking or biking, then you need some form of transport which meets these criteria in one way or another. It needs to be flexible. You don't particularly want to have one train in the morning that leaves only at 6:30 in the morning, because otherwise you are bound to get up very early, even though you may not need to get to work until 9 o'clock. So you need something that goes more or less when you want to go to work. It's got to be affordable, that's essential. And it's sort of nice if you can have your own private space, and it's quite nice if you can feel secure and safe. And if you put all of those things together, you could say that that amounts to convenience. Some of the things are mandatory and some of the things are optional. Certainly affordability is mandatory. Beyond a certain price, no matter how nice it is, you can't afford to pay for it. But privacy, you might say, is something you'd like to have but don't have to have. But some combination of these things makes up for convenience. If you put them all together, oh, I'm sorry, and I forgot a very important thing. And these days, in the post-COVID world, then privacy translates into COVID safe, in that we can travel alone or with members of our own bubble. We don't have to share big vehicles with lots of other people. So all of these things come into our choice in the morning when we go to work. And I might wrap them all up and simply say attractiveness. And at which point you would say to me, that's madness, because sitting in this queue is not attractive. There's no way you could describe it in that way. And I would respond to you, well, you have a good point, but because attractiveness is not an absolute term. I agree, it doesn't look very attractive compared to lots of other things in life that I could do with that hour. But actually, it's a comparative term. If I have to go to work, what are the other options? And those options start when I leave my front door. And it might be a winter morning, and it might be a bit murky like this photograph. And it might be 6:30 in the morning, and it's not a very pleasant experience the moment I open my door and step outside. I then have to walk to the bus station, and I stand in the half light, and it might be pretty chilly, and it might even be raining until the bus comes. And then I get in the bus and I join this traffic queue, which is just the same traffic queue I would be in if I had taken my car. So if I have a car, which of the two journeys is more attractive? And when you put it like that, actually the car is pretty attractive. In absolute terms, it's not very nice sitting in a traffic jam, but in relative terms, it's better than the other options. So if our exam question is how can we get people out of their cars for these many trips into the city, then the answer has to be provide an alternative means of transport which is simply more convenient or more attractive than using the car. And that's where our thinking about first and last mile has to begin. We want to develop a solution which is a community solution that has a less bad impact on the environment than our current favourite, which is the car. And in order to outperform the car, it simply has to be more convenient at the point of use. So just thinking back to our problem for Cambridge, we have the city in the centre of the map there, but our problem really is created by all these people moving in from the outside and adding up to the 100,000 people per day. So a lot of these journeys start quite remote from our city, maybe even 20 miles away. And we need a means of connecting all these people to the city centre or to the places where people work, which moves swiftly over quite a long distance to start with, but nevertheless gets us to the centre of the city. Well, there are a lot of exciting things going on in Cambridge at the moment. Cambridge is a very progressive, vibrant city. And everybody probably knows already about the coming of the CAM, the Cambridge Autonomous Metro. There are lots of different ideas about how this might actually manifest itself, but I think a lot of people are now agreed that something of this nature is needed. And if you look at this map, it stretches out, sometimes 20 miles or more to St Neots or to Alconbury and places like that. And so we have a long distance network which we want to be able to use to serve this tidal flow that I described. And there are many proposals for how the CAM might look, but the CAM in itself will be of no use at all if it doesn't connect to our front door. If we think about this total journey, the door-to-door journey, if you're living out in St Neots or somewhere near the end of the CAM or the metro system, you probably don't live very close to the system itself. You may have yet a few miles to go between your front door and the nearest station or a point at which you can get onto the system. So we have to remember that we've got to go from our front door to the first point of connection. We might ride on the tram or the CAM, I beg your pardon. But when we get to our station in the centre of Cambridge, we may yet need to go another distance again. And if the station happens to be anywhere near the railway station, for example, if you're working in the city centre, it's quite a hike from the railway station to the city centre. So we have the first mile from our front door to the CAM, and then we have the last mile from the CAM to our place of work. If we don't solve those problems, then the CAM itself will not be the usable system that effectively solves our problem that we want it to be. So the first and last mile connections are as important as the thing which attracts all the attention, which at the moment is the CAM, which of course it should, because it's a very, very expensive transport system which will need to be constructed and commissioned. So what are the options for this first mile and the last mile? And we come back to the internet. There's nothing new in technology terms about moving people around. Rubber-tired vehicles on roads or steel-wheeled vehicles on rails are still the predominant means of moving people around. But what has changed is our ability to contact them and connect with them. So with the coming of the handheld and with the coming of services like this, which is Via Van, a shared van, where you can get in and out of the vehicle, and one vehicle can take many people, maybe up to 8 or 9 people. This gives us an option now to have essentially a taxi that calls at our front door when we ask for it, takes us perhaps to the CAM for the long distance part of our journey, and makes it easy, makes it convenient for us to take the CAM. So this sort of on-demand bus is an option which exists today, which didn't exist really 10 years ago. And there are other obvious things that exist today that didn't exist 10 years ago. For example, electric bikes. And another more lighter example, electric scooters. These things again are connected via our handhelds. They become very convenient to use. They sometimes bring with them problems. So the very convenience of a dockless system is you can pick it up anywhere and you can leave it anywhere. But if you do leave it anywhere, then you're likely to get litter all over the pavement, rather like this. So not all of these things are problem free. And the way people behave is an integral part of the solution to the system. But there are lots of solutions now emerging in the field of transport which simply weren't available 10 years ago, and which have the ability to make this first and last mile pair of connections sufficiently good that suddenly it becomes more attractive to leave your car at home than it is to take it. And I said a few minutes ago, Cambridge is an exciting place, and it is. There are a lot of things happening. So when you arrive at the CAM station in Cambridge in years to come, and you want to go another 2 or 3 miles to somewhere else in the city, you might even jump on an autonomous shuttle or pod of this type. And just this week, the first trials have started. Here's the pod arriving, being unloaded from the trailer. Trials are starting in Cambridge this week of an autonomous shuttle, which in the future might provide this last mile around town. So in the end, the first and last mile, we have lots of solutions coming now, gratis the internet, which weren't available to us in the past. They all hinge around making us a use of these systems more convenient. And we can have anything that we like. But what we must remember in selecting first and last mile systems is that they provide the access to the mass transit system. And without them, the mass transit system is pretty useless. So they're essential. They're not nice to haves. And in designing our first and last mile systems, we really need to think of convenience as a centerpiece. We need something which will attract people to use it because it's flexible, affordable, private, COVID safe, secure, all of these things. And if we can put them together properly, then we will indeed be able to deliver a future transport system which is simply more convenient than taking the car. And if that is the case, then people will simply take it instead of taking the car. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'm gonna start with the further short series of short presentations we have pre-recorded for the audience today. Please may I remind people to post their questions in the chat and we'll get back to them at the end of all of the talks. So let me just find the right screen for you. There we go. Sharing. Okay, so we have also received an input from the Cambridge City Council, and this is in the form of a video from Councillor Lewis Herbert. Please let me know if you have any issues with hearing the video.
Hi, I'm Lewis Herbert. I'm leader of Cambridge City Council, and I've also been a member of the Greater Cambridge Partnership for about 5 years. We've been doing a lot of work through that period to put in place measures to achieve high quality public transport, to reduce congestion, which is a serious problem at peak times, and also to improve air quality in the city. We're still living through strange times going into a winter with coronavirus, but it's already clear that some of our problems are not going away. Assisted by members of Cambridge Cleantech, Greater Cambridge is world renowned as a centre for research and innovation, and we're one of the fastest growing city regions in the country. Our productivity for the future means there will be new jobs, and there will be still people moving between those jobs, their homes and the city. The travel to work area stretches up past Ely and down almost to the M25. And the last census saw reported commute patterns that spread right across the east of England. which means that a lot of people are trying to get into Cambridge, particularly at peak times, coming from a wide range of towns and villages, and many feel that they're being thrown into something of a catch-22. They feel they have to use a car to get into the city, whether this is due to concerns about reliability of public transport or simply because that public transport isn't convenient. But when they arrive, they can't get around the city. So the last 3 miles matter so much in avoiding people getting trapped in congestion. So the GCP is tackling this problem in a number of ways. The Greater Cambridge Partnership has £500 million from government, and we intend to invest that wisely in fast quality public transport routes. Most of that money is going into 4 major public transport routes: to the west, to Cambourne, to the southeast, out towards Babraham, to the north, to Waterbeach, and to the east, past the Quai junction of the A14. And in addition, we're investing in the Chisholm Trail and lots of other measures to improve life for cyclists. Construction is underway of the Chisholm Trail, including a really special bridge linking Abbey and Chesterton. So what the Chisholm Trail also does is it enables all of the different greenways to link up with each other, and in combination with the 4 public transport corridors that we're generating, links each of the clusters of employment from the Science Park in the north straight into the city centre, down to the biomedical campus in the south, and then on to Babraham and Granta Park. This joined-up network provides flexibility for trips by bus, bike and on foot in the 2020s, and potentially in the 2030s link up to Cam Metro. And even on shorter routes like the school run or shopping or leisure trips like going to the gym, people will be able to walk or cycle. The GCP is also investing in new technology. We're looking at autonomous vehicles, we're looking at different ways of using IT, and there's, I think, a great opportunity for a number of the member organisations within Cambridge Cleantech to come up with ideas that might be of interest to us. I hope you've enjoyed this film and that you've learnt quite a lot about what the Greater Cambridge Partnership plans to do to transform our public transport and other ways of moving between home, job and the city centre. We really are determined to transform transport options for the future of our city and to benefit everybody who lives, works or studies here.
Next are a few highlights from the university research that have been prepared in response to the challenge. We will start with an overview of activities that fall across the university under the umbrella of the Cambridge Zero. Let me start the video.
Cambridge Zero is coordinating research and other efforts across the University of Cambridge so that together we can get to a zero carbon world. This includes working with policymakers to ensure that they can make evidence-informed policy decisions by connecting them with the latest research and innovation on transport and other issues. Relevant to today's workshop, these research efforts at the university involve imagining greener cities for today and tomorrow by channeling expertise across disciplines and coming up with the innovations to reorganize the transportation networks within our cities to make them more livable for everyone. Imagine walking to work each day in cities free from the pollution and noise of internal combustion engines. At the Center for Sustainable Road Freight, researchers led by Professor David Siban are investigating fuel savings and lower emissions through electric urban delivery, while work looking into ultra-low emission buses, led by Professor John Miles, is designing a modular common platform for ultra-low emission electric buses to produce a system able to power a fleet of vehicles. Others, at the Energy Efficient Cities Initiative, led by Dr. Adam Boyes, are quantifying energy use and associated emissions from vehicle fleets and rethinking vehicle size, technology, and fuel from the bottom up. These are just a few of the examples of research efforts into these transformations afoot at the university. But research that could help us make these changes goes beyond technological innovation, and researchers at the university are investigating behavioral changes and the complexity of our everyday motivations to help us lead happier, healthier lives. For example, in the Department of Psychology at Qubit, researchers like Dr. Lee DeWitt are connecting social psychologists, behavioral economists, experts in public policy, health, the environment, engineering, and design with others who would like to use the latest behavioral insights to tackle the challenges of today. And at the Behavior and Health Research Unit, scientists working with Professor Dame Teresa Martau are contributing evidence to efforts to achieve sustained behavioral change in order to improve health outcomes and reduce health inequalities. At the Body, Mind, and Behavior Laboratory, led by Dr. Simone Schnall, they're trying to understand why people often think and behave in seemingly surprising ways, and how to capitalize on insights from behavioral science to encourage adaptive choices in everyday life. Again, these are just a few of the examples of exciting research being undertaken right now. But this is just the start of a journey. Cambridge Zero is excited to be developing work that will help connect researchers across the university and further afield to help enable a societal transition to a zero-carbon world.
So this is the video that was prepared by Dr. Amy Munro-Fowre and Ethan Ames, who is here with us today. And I think you can see the broad overview of a number of areas of research in Cambridge that could have significant relevance to our discussions. The next case study we have for you is a little bit longer. This is a study of an in-depth analysis of public health benefits and risks associated with transport. It is presented by Lambert Tata.
Hi, welcome. I'm Lambert in the Public Health Modeling Program at the MRC Epidemiology Unit in the University of Cambridge. I want to walk you through a current approach for estimating the health impact of urban transport in a variety of cities called ITHIM-R. But first, how do you usually get to work? For me, I cycle. My colleagues at the office walk. And you may be using a car, public transport, or any other means. The truth is that how we travel in our cities today hugely impacts our health. You may be gaining physical activity as you walk or cycle, or you may be increasing your exposure to road traffic injuries, air or noise pollution as you interact with the ever-growing road traffic. Your choice of travel mode not only affects you, but also affects people around you. Who knows exactly how many people enjoy better health, or on the other hand, lose their lives because of our urban transport choices? Quantifying these health impacts to improve urban transport choices is a huge challenge. Until now, efforts to quantify urban health transport have largely focused on cities in high-income countries, using methods that are not easily transferable. In particular, cities in low and middle-income countries, where these impacts may be huge and which lack data for modeling, are generally left out. Our model has the potential to estimate health impact of transport in a wide range of cities.
This model was developed by a group of scientists led by the Public Health Modeling team at the University of Cambridge MRC Epidemiology Unit. The model estimates health impacts through three major pathways. That is, physical activity, air pollution, and road traffic injuries. Potential population health benefits and harms can be calculated for alternative transport scenarios and compared against each other. Through collaboration with the World Health Organization, we have already piloted this model in Accra, in Ghana, as part of activities of the Urban Health Initiative project in that city. This pilot helped with the development and evaluation of the toll in a context where it's most needed, that is a rapidly growing city in a low and middle income country. To run the model, we aim for the best available data, although these data always come with uncertainties. Some of the key data required include population age and sex, physical activity, travel patterns, road traffic collisions, background air pollution, and the contribution of different modes to air pollution. In the case of Accra, early engagement of local experts facilitated the process of identifying and obtaining these data. We extracted people's travel characteristics from the 2009 Ghana National Time Use Survey and combined this with physical activity data from the 2008 WHO Search Survey to build a new population for the Greater Accra metropolitan area, with each individual now having travel information and non-travel physical activity information. We estimated air pollution as PM2.5 concentration using fleet size from household vehicle ownership estimates reported by the Ministry of Transport, and transport contribution to air pollution was obtained from the Ghana Environmental Agency. The road traffic injury data came from the Ghana Police Service through the Building and Roads Research Institute. Scenarios assessed were informed by the policies considered for the city through a consultative process involving local stakeholders and the modeling team. These policies had been mapped as part of the Urban Health Initiative pilot project, strongly supported by the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, transport and planning authorities in the country. The successful application of ITIM-R in Accra gave us confidence that the model is fit for purpose to help inform policy decisions not only in Ghana, but also in other low and middle income countries. We are now running calculations for Delhi, Bangalore, Visakhapatnam, Sao Paulo, Mexico, Buenos Aires, Bogota, Belo Horizonte, and Santiago. This allows us to compare results across settings and enable a productive dialogue on the approach and transport policy options to be considered. The current model, ITIM-R, is written in open source R language and hosted on GitHub. It requires some technical expertise to run, but we intend to develop a user-friendly version for easy manipulation by practitioners.
Our approach has the potential to estimate the health impact of transport in a wide range of cities. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you want to help develop or apply this approach in your setting. Thank you.
Right. Final two cases are about something else. So the next case I am going to present on behalf of Dr. Amanda Prorok, who is a university lecturer at the Department of Computer Science and Technology, and she couldn't be here today with us. So I'll do my best to introduce you to the key ideas of the cooperative driving project on her behalf. The Prorok Lab explores multi-robot and multi-agent systems to find ways of achieving common goals and optimizing overall performance. This has multiple applications. In the area of future mobility and automated vehicles, the team conducts experimental work involving miniature cars and machine learning and explores algorithmic rules looking for ways to maximize throughput. This could minimize traffic jams, as well as avoid unnecessary braking, stopping, and reacceleration, in turn leading to improved energy efficiency and decreased emissions in transport. The group compared two algorithms where decisions undertaken by the fleet of model cars are either egocentric, taking into account individual priorities, and as such quite similar to the common driver behavior on the roads, or cooperative, based on communication and planning between several vehicles. This video demonstrates the results. You can see here an experiment involving custom-made miniature cars traveling on a track set up on the office floor. In the non-cooperative scenario, if one of the cars is stopped due to a flat tire, for example, it quickly has detrimental effect on several other cars having to significantly slow down and the traffic jam begins to form. On the other hand, stopping a car when the fleet can communicate and cooperate did not cause major delays to any other cars, with the traffic continuing to flow. Small adjustments to speed of the other vehicles ensured optimized merging of traffic around the obstacle and allowed every vehicle to complete its journey in good time. Results from the study illustrated on the short video indicate at least 35% increase in throughput, while adjustments to individual car behaviors needed to achieve this are very subtle. Further materials and contact details can be found on the Product Lab website, including a hyperlink to a recent BBC4 program which features the cooperative driving project. In the context of today's workshop and the challenges presented by Councillor Lewis Herbert, I would say this research presents an opportunity to improve travel for commuters starting their trips further out in rural areas, as well as the public and private transport sharing busy roads in Cambridge or elsewhere, as presented by John earlier. Ability to rapidly test and evolve driving algorithms in a lab environment underpins further development and testing, but as we have witnessed, the outlook is very promising. And now the final case study is presented by Dr. Michael Bradley from the Engineering Design Centre.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike Bradley. I work at the Engineering Design Centre, which is the EDC, and I'm going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour of what the EDC view on inclusive design is. I think we all know we're living in an ageing population. Here's what used to be called a population pyramid, and we now call a population kebab, looking at how the population is getting older. So why is this important? Well, as we get older, we tend to have less than full ability. Half the adult population here, you can see, are in the zone where they're starting to experience some impairments. We think it's really normal to be different. So let's have a look at these capabilities in a little bit more detail. So we tend to think of vision, hearing, thinking, reach dexterity, including strength, and mobility as kind of key capabilities for interacting in the world. And if we sort of make the assumption that there is a continuum of capability of all these things between those who have very poor capability and those who have excellent, and it's something like a normal distribution where most of us are somewhere in the middle. So we have to accept that, of course, that some people are going to have a disability and are going to need assistive technology, whether that's a screen reader for a visual impairment or a wheelchair for a mobility impairment. But if we have predominantly young designers designing things and they say, well, if I can do it, it's fine. Really what we're saying is that only people as capable as them or with greater capability than them will be guaranteed to be able to use that product. And there's this ability gap, which we think may be the root of some exclusion, which is sort of borne by ignorance. Now, we think this also applies to digital interactions, which is something that we've surveyed relatively recently in a UK population survey. And we showed people an image like the one on the left, and we said to them, well, you need a keyboard to be able to bring up a location on this mock-up of a website. What would you do to bring up that on-screen keyboard? And as you might expect, most of the people did get this in fact correct, 55%, but there was still quite a large proportion of people who said, I don't know, at 22.8%, and about 15% did something completely different. This technology competence, we also ran 7 other tests of a similar type. They're very, very simple for those who are technologically capable. And as you can see, it's the young people who did the best, and a lot of the older people were not getting any of the answers correct at all. And in fact, 45% of the over 75s didn't get any correct. In summary, please don't forget those less capable than yourself when you're thinking about solutions to this first and last mile problem. Thank you for your attention.
Right, so we are now back to the agenda with the plenary question and answers. I'm very sorry, but while I was presenting, I couldn't actually see anything on the chat. So I will ask the co-organizers to flag up any pressing questions that there may be. Hello?
We haven't had any questions so far, Aga.
In which case, may I suggest that we will move on to the breakout discussions, and our speakers are, many of them, with us. John has also offered to move between the breakout rooms. So if you have any questions, you're most welcome to join into those discussions directly with him in the breakout rooms.
Aga?
Yes, there's a question from Lambert. Sorry, yes?
Yes, we just had a question from Lambert.
Brilliant. So Lambert is asking, what I found more challenging is how to address the mile between home and CAM. It seems easier to mass transport people from CAM to their offices because they are close together.
Yes, I agree, Lambert, and thank you for your question. I think it is more difficult to get people from their doorstep to the CAM and then in the evening from the CAM back to their doorstep when they're going home, because it's, generally speaking, a much wider area with less dense population. As you correctly point out, when you're at the centre of the city, lots of things are relatively close proximity, so it's easier to do. So they are two different problems. And we will need to come up with appropriate solutions. I can't claim to know what those solutions are. I can only see possibilities. Just off the cuff, I think some form of on-demand transport of the type that was illustrated by the Via van, I think something like that is the short-term solution to our problems at the doorstep, or between the doorstep and the extremity of the CAM. I think in the longer term, there might be a wider range of things, including autonomous vehicles, but some form of shared transport, which is nevertheless flexible and comes when we call it. I think that's the solution somewhere in there.
Thank you, John. Indeed, as you were speaking, Mike Sargent has posted in the chat that some of the proposals seem to be about small vehicles in the city centre. May I suggest that we move on to the group discussions, and this gives us still a good amount of time to capture your thoughts and reactions to what you've seen this morning. Apologies, this was rather intense download of various informations, but at least I found it extremely stimulating and thought-provoking.